Some things continue after the hand that set them moving has withdrawn. The center no longer answers. The structure has not stopped. What set them moving is not the same as what keeps them in motion. The archive holds the interval, not the cause. What the cause left in motion. The bell tower stands at the edge of the square. The square is empty at this hour. The cobblestones hold the temperature the day deposited, and the night is drawing out. Unevenly, the stones near the center cooling faster than the stones near the walls, which retain what the walls themselves hold. The fountain in the center is not running. The water in the basin is still, the surface holding the sky's reflection, which at this hour offers very little back. The tower rises from the corner. Stone, the local limestone the region provided when the tower was built, cut into courses that the centuries have settled. The mortar between the courses has hardened beyond the hardness it had when it was laid. The stones above have compressed it. The seasons have cycled their expansion and contraction through it. What holds the tower now is not what held it when it was new. It is what those forces made of what was laid. The bell hangs in the open frame at the top. Bronze, copper and tin, the proportions chosen across generations of casting and listening, until the founders arrived at the shape a bell requires. The curve that sustains its tone, the thickness that carries the resonance across open ground. The bell was poured molten into a mold. The metal cooled. The mold was broken away. What remained was the bell in its current form. The curve of the walls, the thickness at the lip, the hollow inside that the bronze closes around. The clapper hangs inside, suspended from the crown. The bell does not require the hand that set it moving. It requires only that nothing stops it. The clapper strikes the inner wall. For a moment, the bronze is no longer at rest. The place of contact tightens, then releases. The movement passes through the curve of the bell, outward, toward the lip, toward the air beyond. What enters the air is not the strike. It is what the bronze has done with the strike, translated, shaped, carried by the metal's own form into a sound the metal alone determines. The bell does not produce one frequency. It releases several at once. The lowest tone leaves first and remains longest. Above it, thinner tones rise and fall away sooner. Each one belongs to the bell's curve, its thickness, its alloy, the hollow the casting left inside the bronze. No other bell leaves the air in exactly this arrangement. The bell is sounding at this moment in all of these tones simultaneously. Each tone decays at its own rate. The higher ones lose themselves to the air and to the body of the metal more quickly than the lower ones. The highest are gone in seconds, taken into the air molecules, taken into the surfaces of the square, redistributed into whatever received them. The lowest persists, at some distance from the tower. After the higher tones have fallen below what the ear can receive, only the lowest remains, still traveling outward, still arriving at surfaces, still moving the air. The air does not require an ear to carry the sound. The sound does not require a receiver to exist. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The stone of the tower has been receiving the bell's vibration for as long as the bell has hung in it. Each ringing, the bell swings, the clapper strikes, the bronze sounds. The movement travels from the bell through the axle into the timber frame, and from the timber frame into the stone of the tower walls. Most of what the bell produced has already gone into the air as sound. The remainder enters the stone. Not all of it. Enough. Stone is not absolute stillness. Each ringing enters it by a fraction. The courses hold. The joints receive. The smallest flaws in the stone take the stress more sharply than the unbroken grain around them. In a single ringing, the stone returns to what it was. The disturbance passes. Nothing remains visible, but the stone has not received the bell once. The stone has received the bell thousands of times. What no single ringing produces, the accumulated ringings produce. The stone at the points where the vibration concentrates is different from the stone further from the path. Not visibly different, not different in any way that affects the tower's stability, but different at the depth where the material remembers what it has been asked to do. The grain at those points has been rearranged by the accumulated cycles. The state of the stone there is the state those cycles brought it to. The stone holds what the bell left in it, not sound, not the reason. The record does not distinguish the ringings that call the village to prayer from the ringings that call to alarm, from the ringings that marked the hour, from the ringings that marked nothing. The stone did not attend to why. It received the frequency. It holds what the frequency left. The timber of the bell frame holds a different record. Wood receives stress differently than stone. The fibers at the points where the frame holds the axle have compressed and adjusted across the years of the bell's motion. The grain at those points denser than the grain further from the load. The wood shape narrowed at the bearing surface in a way the original cut did not produce. The frame that supports the bell tonight is not the frame that was installed. It is the frame those forces made of it, season by season, ringing by ringing, the wood arriving at the state the accumulated load has required. The frame holds the bell without holding why. The sound that left the bell is in the square. Not all of it. The higher tones decayed in the air between the tower and the far side. What is in the square now is the lower end of what the bell released. The longer traveling tones, still moving outward from the tower, still arriving at the cobblestones and the walls and the still water of the fountain. The square is empty. The pressure of the sound arrives at the surfaces of the square, the stones underfoot, the walls of the buildings on the far side, the water in the basin, and is absorbed and reflected in the proportions each surface determines. Stone takes a fraction and returns the rest. Water takes differently than stone. The reflected sound crosses back toward the tower, arrives at the tower stone, enters the structure. A fraction of what the bell produced returned after the transit of the square, arriving too reduced to affect the bell's current motion, but arriving. The hand withdrew. The motion it began did not withdraw with it. The sound in the square carries no information about the hand. It carries only what the bronze produced, moving at the rate the air allows, decaying at the rate the air and the surfaces require, arriving at whatever surfaces lie in its path without attending to whether those surfaces were meant as receivers. The walls of the buildings across the square were not the target of the ringing. They receive it anyway. Their surfaces take what they take and return the rest, and are, in this taking, fractionally different from what they were before the sound arrived, warmed by the smallest amount, by what the sound deposited in passing. The square is empty and the sound is in it. The sound does not require the square to be populated. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The rope hangs still in the ringing room below. Hemp, plant fibers reduced to their structural form by the preparation that readied them for use, twisted into strands, the strands twisted into cord. The rope has been pulled many thousands of times. The fibers at the grip section, the length the hand holds, are different from the fibers at the top, where the rope attaches to the wheel, and different from the fibers in the middle, where the rope passes through the aperture in the floor of the bell chamber. At each of these locations, the rope holds the history of what it has done. The grip section is smoother than it was when the rope was new. The fibers at the surface of the grip have been worn by the friction of the hand. The outermost fibers reduced to a finish that the manufacturer did not produce, present only because the accumulated pulls required it. The aperture section carries a wear pattern on the side that touches the aperture edge. The fibers there reduced further than the fibers on the opposite side, the asymmetry mapping the angle at which the rope was typically pulled. The wheel section carries the compression history of the rope's repeated bending over the wheel's rim. The total length of the rope is fractionally shorter than it was when new. The rope is still now. The bell above it is not still. The bell was set in motion by the pull, and the pull has ceased, and the bell continues. The cord running over the wheel attached to the axle turning in the bearings. These carried the force of the pull to the bell and set it swinging, and the swing set the clapper in motion, and the clapper struck the bronze. Each of these transfers is complete. The rope is no longer transmitting force. The bell is swinging on what the pull deposited in it, the arc decreasing with each swing as the bearings and the air take their portion of the motion. The arc is decreasing. The bell is still swinging. The rope that initiated the sequence has returned to stillness. It hangs at its current length, the fibers at the grip section, holding the shape the accumulated pulls produced. The bell above it continues at the amplitude this moment allows, not the amplitude of the first swing, which was the amplitude the pull produced, but what remains after the friction and the air have taken what they have taken from the motion since. The vibration in the bronze is still present, reduced from the amplitude at the moment of impact. The bronze has given what it has given to the air and to itself, but present. The metal at the surface of the bell is still moving and returning, still releasing pressure into the air, still producing the tones the bell's shape and alloy determine. The lowest is still there. The higher ones are gone. What the air receives from the bell at this moment is not what it received at the moment of impact. It is what remains after the faster leaving tones have left, the lower, longer lasting ones, still audible but reduced, the bell's sound at a late stage of its leaving, rather than at its first full release. The square receives now not the ringing, but what the ringing has become. The same bronze, the same air, but at the amplitude this moment in the decay has brought it to. There is nothing in the bronze that carries the reason the bell was rung. The metal holds only what is left in it, the current motion, the rate at which the motion is leaving, the tones the shape and alloy determine. These set what the bell does next. They do not require the hand that set the motion in place. The motion will decay below what the ear can receive, not because the bell decides to stop, because what the motion carries is finite, and the leaving continues until what is left falls below what surfaces can register. This will happen at the rate it happens, not faster because the hand is gone, not slower because the hand has withdrawn. The process continues because nothing has stopped it. Bronze holds vibration, stone holds stress, hemp holds wear, air holds pressure. None of these require the hand to remain. In the stone of the tower, the record of thousands of ringings is present at the points where the vibration has gathered. The record does not distinguish ceremony from alarm, habit from accident. The stone received the frequency and the amplitude. It holds what those left. In the rope, the compression of the accumulated pulls is present in the fibers. The smooth grip, the slight reduction in diameter at the hold point, the asymmetric wear at the aperture. The rope holds the shape the pulling required. In the air of the square, the sound the current ringing produced is still travelling, outward from the tower, past the fountain, reaching the far walls, being taken and returned, continuing past the square into the streets beyond, decaying as it travels, arriving at surfaces further and further from the source, at amplitudes further below what the bell first produced. The square is empty. The materials continue at the rate their own properties require. They do not register the hand's absence. They do not register the empty square. The bell is still ringing. The lowest tone is in the bronze, leaving at the rate bronze allows. The stone holds its record. The rope hangs still in the chamber below. The fibers at the grip section holding the shape the accumulated hands produced. The pressure is in the square and past the square, moving outward at the speed the air allows, arriving at every surface in its path. The hand is gone. The motion it began has not yet finished leaving. The archive remains. What is seen is not the thing. It is the result of a fire, a body, and a surface arranged in a certain order. The archive holds the surface, not the source. What the source allowed the surface to receive. The cave is open at one end, not wide, narrow enough that the air from outside enters in a slow current at this hour. The cooler night air moving along the floor toward the back of the cave. the warmer interior air rising along the ceiling and leaving by the same opening. The exchange continuous and unhurried. The opening is not where the cave begins. The opening is where the cave allows entry. Inside, the cave widens. The walls turn outward and back. The ceiling rises. The floor descends in a long, shallow slope toward the chamber at the rear. The stone of the walls is limestone, porous in places where water once moved through it, dense in places where the minerals settle differently, the surface uneven in the way natural stone is uneven, the small irregularities holding the angles the stone has held since the cave was formed. The chamber at the rear is large enough to stand in. The floor there is level, the ceiling high enough that the smoke of a fire rises and gathers near the rock before drifting back along the upper air toward the opening. The walls of this chamber curve inward at the top, then meet, not in a clean dome, but in a rough vault, the rock joining itself in the way stone joins itself across the slow movement of geological time. In the chamber, a fire is burning, not large, a working fire built for light, for warmth at the back of the cave, where the outside air no longer reaches. The wood is dry. The flames are steady, rising in the still air of the chamber, the smoke leaving in its slow upward path. The fire has been burning long enough that the embers at the base have formed a bed of orange and red beneath the active flames, the heat radiating outward in all directions from the burning material. The fire is the light source. Everything else in the chamber receives its illumination from the fire. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the objects between the fire and the walls. The light leaves the fire in all directions at once, not as a beam, as a field, radiating outward from each point of the burning material, traveling in straight lines through the air of the chamber, arriving at every surface that has line of sight to the flames. The walls receive light, the floor receives light, the ceiling receives light. The objects between the fire and the walls receive light on the side that faces the fire, and not on the side that faces away. The side that faces away is in shadow. What leaves the fire is not only light, heat leaves it too, radiating outward in the same directions, traveling through the air at the same instant the light does, but the heat falls off more quickly. The walls of the chamber, only a few paces from the fire, receive the heat at a fraction of what the air directly above the flames receives. The far wall, where the shadows form, holds barely the temperature of the chamber's general air. The heat from the fire does not reach it as image, only the light does. The wall will hold a shape against the brightness around it. The wall will not hold the warmth the body is receiving on the side that faces the flames. A shadow is not an absence in the usual sense. It is a region where the light has been intercepted before arrival. The light that would have reached the wall at that location has reached the object instead, absorbed, scattered, returned in some proportion the object's surface determines, but not continued. The wall behind the object receives only the light that traveled around the object, arriving from angles the object could not block. The region where that light is reduced is what the wall holds as shadow. The shadow on the wall is the wall. It is not a thing placed on the wall. It is the wall's own surface, receiving less light at that location than at the regions around it. The darkness is the wall, illuminated less, The shape of the shadow is determined by the geometry of three things at once: the fire's position, the object's outline, the wall's distance and angle. None of these alone produces the shadow. The shadow is what arrives when the three are arranged in a particular relation. Move the fire, the shadow changes. Move the object, the shadow changes. Move the wall, the shadow changes. The shadow has no existence independent of this arrangement. It is the arrangement made visible on the wall. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The shadow had not lied. It had only arrived from one direction. Between the fire and the wall, there are objects, stones the cave has held since before the fire was built, fallen from the ceiling across the long time the cave has existed, settled into positions on the floor that the floor's small irregularities allowed. Pieces of wood, brought in from outside, stacked near the fire for later use. A bowl set on a stone. A cloak draped across another. The body of someone seated near the fire. The body's edges holding the warmth at the side that faces the flames and giving it back to the air at the side that faces away. Each of these objects is between the fire and some portion of the wall. The light reaching the wall in those portions has passed the objects first. Where the light is blocked, the wall holds the shape of what blocked it. Where the light passes around, the wall holds the lit region the surrounding light produced. The wall, all along its surface, is a record of what is between it and the fire. Not the things themselves, but the shapes the things produced in their interception of the light. The wall receives light at every point on its surface. At some points, the light arrives at full intensity. At other points, the light arrives reduced, because an object stood in the path, because the angle from the fire was steeper, because the wall itself is recessed at that location, and the geometry of the chamber turned the light away. The wall does not distinguish these reasons. It receives what arrives. The arrangement of lit and unlit regions on its surface is the wall's record of the chamber's current condition. It holds the shape the geometry produced. The shape on the wall is not the thing that cast it. The wood near the fire is round and rough and heavy with the weight of dry wood. The shadow it casts on the wall is flat, a region of reduced light whose outline depends on the wood's profile from the fire's angle, on the distance from the fire to the wood, on the distance from the wood to the wall, on the angle of the wall itself. The shadow is two-dimensional. The wood is three-dimensional. The shadow shows the wood's silhouette as seen from one direction. The other directions of the wood, the back, the sides facing away from the fire, the underside, are not present in the shadow. The shadow has no depth. The wood still does. What reaches the wall is what the wood becomes when received from one side only. The wood is more than the shadow. The shadow is what the wall receives, given the wall's position and the fire's position and the geometry of the air between them. The body seated near the fire holds the same relation to its shadow. The body's outline against the firelight is what the wall registers. The body's depth, the body's texture, the body's warmth, the body's interior. These do not travel to the wall. The wall holds the body's silhouette, the curve of the shoulder, the angle of the head, the shape the body makes against the light from the position the body currently occupies. The body holds itself from inside. The wall holds the body from one direction only. These are not the same holding. The body holds the warmth of the fire on the side that faces the flames. The body holds the cooler air of the chamber on the side that faces the wall. The body holds the weight of itself, the position of its joints, the small adjustments it is making to remain seated comfortably on the stone. None of this travels to the wall. What travels is the geometry of the body's outline against the light, and the geometry alone. The wall's record of the body is true. It is true as a record of what the wall, at its location, with the fire at its location, can receive of the body. It is true as a record of the silhouette. It is not the body. It was never the body. It is what the wall receives when the wall is where it is, the fire is where it is, the body is where it is, and the light from the fire arrives at the wall after passing the body. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The wall is not a clean plane. The stone is uneven in the way the cave's own forming left it. Ridges where one layer of limestone settled against another. Small hollows where water once passed, and the rock gave way to it. Regions where the surface curves inward, and other regions where it bends away. The light arrives at all of these. What it produces is not the same on a ridge as on a hollow. The shadow crosses a ridge, and its edge breaks slightly at the line. The shadow falls into a hollow, and its center darkens further than it would on a flat region. The shadow bends across an outward curve and stretches longer than the shadow on the wall nearby. The outline reaching the wall is the same outline. What the wall returns of it is the outline received through the unevenness of itself. The fire moves. The flames are not steady in the absolute sense. They flicker, small variations in the rate of combustion at the burning surface, in the currents of the air rising from the heat, in the position of the burning material as the wood is slowly consumed and the embers below shift. Each flicker changes the position of the light source. The shadows on the wall change with it. A shadow that was sharp becomes briefly soft. A shadow's edge moves by a small amount. A region of the wall that was in light is briefly in shadow. A region of the wall that was in shadow is briefly in light. The body did not move. The wood did not move. The wall did not move. Only the fire moved, and the wall's record of everything between it and the fire changed. This is the condition of the wall. What the wall holds at any moment is determined by the position of the fire at that moment. The shadows are not properties of the objects. They are properties of the geometry. The objects continue, unchanged, while the shadows shift across the wall in the rhythm the fire's small movements produce. The shadow shifts. The object holds still. A second fire, if there were one, would produce different shadows. If a second fire were burning at another point in the chamber, every object would cast two shadows, one from each source, and the two shadows would overlap on the wall in regions where the geometries intersected. the wall would hold both records simultaneously. Each shadow would still be true as a record of its own light source. Neither would be more correct than the other. The wall would hold the sum of what arrived from both directions. There is only one fire in this chamber. The wall holds the record of what arrives from this one source. If the fire were elsewhere, the record would be elsewhere. If there were two fires, there would be two records. The wall's surface is available to receive whatever light the chamber's current arrangement allows it to receive. It does not require any particular arrangement. It receives what comes. The body seated near the fire turns slightly. The shadow on the wall reorganizes. The line of the shoulder shifts. The shape of the head against the firelight finds a new position. The wall holds the new shape, not because the wall changed, but because what the wall was receiving changed in its arrangement before arrival. The body, from inside, registers the turn as a small adjustment of posture. The wall, from its position, registers the turn as a new silhouette. Both records are accurate. Each is the record its receiver was positioned to make. The cave is quiet. The fire continues its small adjustments at its location in the chamber. The objects between the fire and the wall continue in their positions. The wall continues to receive the light that the chamber's arrangement allows. The shadows shift in the small ways the fire's flickering produces, and hold still in the longer rhythms between flickers. What the wall holds truly. It is the truth of one direction. It is the truth a surface receives when the surface, the source, and the intervening material are arranged as they are arranged now. It does not contain what the objects are from inside. It does not contain what the fire is beyond the light that left it and reached the wall. It does not contain what is behind the objects, on the side that faces away from the fire and away from the wall. The wall does not lack these things. The wall was never given them. What the wall received, it holds. What it did not receive is not absent, it is elsewhere. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The wall holds light, the body holds warmth, the wood holds weight, the fire holds combustion. None of them hold the thing the others receive. What is on the wall is true as the wall's record. The shape of the body's silhouette against the firelight is the shape the wall receives. The shape is real, present as a region of reduced illumination, present as a geometric consequence of the body's outline and the fire's position and the wall's distance. The shape is not a deception. It is what the wall is given to hold, from where the wall is. What is not on the wall is also true. The warmth on the body's skin facing the fire, the weight of the wood resting on the stone, the slow consumption of the burning material at the fire's base, the cooler air against the side of the body that faces the wall. These are not present on the wall. They are present elsewhere, in the body, in the wood, in the fire, in the air. The wall does not hold them. The wall could not hold them. These are not the wall's part. The fire continues. The wood near the fire holds its weight in the position it has held since it was placed there. The body near the fire holds its warmth on the side facing the flames, and gives it to the air on the side facing the wall. The wall holds the shapes, the silhouettes the geometry currently produces, at the location each shape currently occupies on its surface. The shape on the wall has not lied. It is what the wall received from the direction the wall was facing. The body is still where the body is. The fire is still where the fire is. The shape will move when one of them moves. The shape was never the thing. It is the meeting of the thing and the surface that receives it. The archive remains. Some things remain within reach. The page does not hold the world. It holds only the line the hand was able to place on it. The archive holds the boundary, not the empire, what the hand could reach while the world continued outside. The tent stands at the edge of the camp, not at the center. The center holds the larger structures, the council space, the storage, the daily traffic of those who carry orders and supplies through the routine of an army settled for the night. The tent at the edge is smaller. The cloth is the same cloth as the others. The poles are the same poles. What distinguishes this tent from the tents around it is not visible from the outside. Inside the tent at this hour, there is a single light, a candle set on a low table. The flame is steady, protected from the slow movement of air the tent seems allow. The wick burning at the rate the wax provides, the small column of light rising from the flame and falling on what is closest to it. The table holds the candle. The table holds a stack of pages, partly used. The table holds an inkwell, its small mouth open. The table holds a pen, resting beside the inkwell, the tip slightly stained where the last line was drawn. A body sits at the table. The chair has been holding the body long enough that the wood has reached the body's temperature at the points of contact. The seat, the back, the place where the forearm rests against the edge of the table. The body has not moved much for some time. The room knows the body's outline by the warmth the body has placed in the air around it, by the slow exchange that has been occurring between the body's skin and the cooler air of the tent. Beyond the cloth of the tent, the camp. Other tents at their positions, dark or dimly lit. Horses tied along the picket lines at the camp's edge, shifting their weight in the small adjustments of standing sleep. Soldiers in their roles beside the lower fires, breathing in the rhythm of their rest. A watch standing at the perimeter, the watch's footsteps small enough that they do not reach this tent. Beyond the camp, the dark fields, the road that brought the army here, the country it is moving through, and beyond that country, the empire whose far edges this body has never seen. The body in the tent is the body that holds the empire. The hand on the table is the hand that signs what governs the provinces. The pen in the hand is the pen that has just placed a line on the page. The line on the page is small. It does not reach to the edge of the paper. It begins where the previous line ended and extends to the point where the hand chose to stop. What is on the page is what the hand placed there. The ink transferred from the pen to the paper at each point where the pen met the page. The line a continuous record of where the pen was at each moment of its motion. What is on the page is not in the wind outside the tent. The wind is at its own work tonight. It is moving across the ridges to the north of the camp, slowed by the trees there, accelerated where the ground opens, carrying the cooler air of the elevation down toward the river. The wind does not know about the line on the page. The line on the page does not know about the wind. They are at their own scales, in their own locations, doing what they are doing. The hand had not failed to reach. The object was never inside its distance. The pen connects to the hand at one end. The pen connects to the ink at the other end. The ink connects to the page at the point where the pen presses. These are three contacts in sequence: hand to pen to ink to page. And the line that appears is the sum of these contacts working in series, transferring the hand's motion through the pen's pressure through the ink's wetness onto the paper, where it dries into the mark that remains. Each contact is between adjacent surfaces. Each surface is within reach of the next. The hand reaches the pen reaches the ink reaches the page. The chain is unbroken across the small distances that the table arrangement allows. Nothing in the chain reaches further than the next contact requires. The hand does not reach the wind. The pen does not reach the wind. The ink does not reach the wind. The wind is outside the tent, at its own pressures and its own currents, and no chain of contact extends from the table out through the cloth of the tent into the air that is moving across the ridges. The hand reached the page. The wind continued elsewhere. These are not failures. They are the geometry of what was within distance of what. Above the line the hand has just placed, there are other lines placed in earlier sessions, last night, the night before that. Each line was placed at a moment when the hand was at the page and the ink was on the pen and the candle was lit. Each line is now dry, fixed in the ink the air took to itself. The page holds these lines as it holds the latest line. The hand no longer reaches them. The hand can reach the page. It can place a new line. It cannot place a line over the dry lines. They are already fixed, already past the wetness that allowed them to take the pen's pressure. The earlier lines are visible on the paper. They are within sight of the hand. They are no longer within distance of what the hand can do. What is past is on the page. What is past is not in reach. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The candle illuminates what is near it. The page is bright. The pen is visible. The inkwell catches the light at the rim of its small mouth. The hand is lit on the side that faces the flame and held in shadow on the side that faces away. The wood of the table is warm in color near the candle, darker at the corners further from the flame. The light is at its full intensity at the page and falls off with distance from there. The walls of the tent are dim. The cloth at the far side of the tent receives almost nothing of the candle. The light has traveled the small distance and lost most of its intensity to the geometry of the spread. What reaches the far cloth is only the indirect light returned by the other surfaces, by the table, by the floor, by the hand itself, each surface returning a fraction of what it received, and that fraction reaching the far cloth at amplitudes barely above the dark of an unlit tent. The heat falls off faster than the light. The page is warm enough that the ink dries on it faster than it would on a colder surface. The hand is warm where it faces the candle. The wood of the table holds the small heat the flame has been giving to it since the candle was lit, but the wall of the tent holds barely the chamber's general air. The flame does not warm the tent. The flame warms what is close to it. The rest of the tent is at the temperature the night outside has set. The candle does not extend the body's range. It lights what the body's hand could reach in the dark. It does not let the body reach further. The page is lit because the page was already within reach of the hand. The far cloth is dim because the far cloth was already beyond reach. The light follows the same geometry the hand follows. Bright where contact is possible. Faint where contact is not. The flame on the wick is steady at the wick. The flame is not at the wall. The body is also giving heat to the tent, not in the way the candle does. The body does not burn. The body holds the temperature the body's chemistry maintains, and the skin gives that temperature to the air at the rate the temperature gradient requires. The body has been seated at the desk long enough that the air in a small region around the body is warmer than the air at the far cloth. The wood of the chair is warmer at the contact points than at the corners. The fabric of the body's outer layer holds warmth between itself and the skin. The tent is warmer than it would be without the body. The tent is cooler than it would be without the cloth that slows the night. The body cannot warm the night outside. The body can warm only what the body's air is in contact with. The body's reach is the body's range of contact. The cloth of the tent is the boundary, not a wall in the absolute sense. A wall of stone would hold absolute. The cold outside would not reach the inside until the slow conduction through the stone allowed it. The cloth of the tent is thinner. It holds partial. The cold of the night moves through it more quickly than stone would permit. The inner surface of the cloth at a temperature between the cold outside and the warmer interior. The gradient steeper here than it would be through a thicker material. Sound passes through the cloth. The wind across the ridges is audible inside the tent, not at the intensity it would have if no cloth stood between, but present as a low pressure beneath the room's smaller sounds. The cloth does not stop the sound. It softens the sound. What arrives at the body's ear is the sound after the cloth has taken its share, returned its share to the outside air, and let the remainder through at reduced amplitude. The cloth divides. The cloth does not seal. This is what the cloth is for. Not to keep the night out absolutely. That would require a thicker material than any tent allows. Not to admit the night freely. That would require no cloth at all. The cloth is the partial boundary that lets the body work inside while the night continues outside. The body inside is fractionally warmer than the air outside. The page inside is fractionally drier than the air outside. The light inside is contained by the cloth and does not reach the soldiers in their roles beside the lower fires. The night outside is contained by the absence of the cloth elsewhere and does not reach the page beyond what the cloth has slowed. The body and the night are in the same world. The cloth is what keeps them at their distance. The ink dries at the rate the air permits. The line placed on the page receives the air's slow withdrawal of the moisture the ink carried. The wet ink darkens slightly as the moisture leaves. The line becomes fixed when the drying is complete. Fixed not because the hand decided it was fixed, but because the air took from it what made it movable. The ink could not have remained wet without the air being different from the ink. The air could not have been changed by the hand. The drying happens because air and ink are within distance of each other, and the gradient between them moves. The page received what the hand placed on it. The wind outside received what the wind outside received. Neither altered the other's course. The empire is not in the tent. The empire is where the empire is. In the cities, on the roads, at the borders, in the granaries where this year's harvest is stored, in the courts where the cases are being heard, whether anyone is awake to hear them or not. The body in the tent is at one point on the map of all this. Where the body sits is the only point at which the body's hand can place a line. The rest of the map continues without the line being placed. The line being placed does not reach the rest of the map. It reaches the page. The page is in the tent. The tent is in the camp. The camp is in the country. The country is in the empire. The empire is at the size the empire is. The line is at the size the line is. These do not scale to each other. A line on a page is not a smaller version of an empire. It is a line on a page. The hand can place the line. The hand cannot place the harvest in the granaries. The hand cannot place the cases being heard. The hand cannot place the wind across the ridges. The hand cannot place the breath of the horses at the picket lines. Each of these continues at the rate its own conditions allow. The harvest dries in the granaries at the rate the granary air permits. The cases proceed at the rate the courts proceed. The wind moves at the rate the night air moves. The horses breathe at the rate of their sleep. In the granaries far from this camp, the grain releases the last of its moisture into the warmer air above it. The walls of the granaries take some of that moisture and pass it slowly to the wider atmosphere. The drying proceeds, whether the harvest is observed or not. The walls hold the temperature their own materials maintain. No hand at any desk anywhere is reaching the harvest now. The harvest continues anyway. In the courts far from this camp, the cases proceed at the rate the courts allow. The arguments are stated. The records are written. The decisions reach the parties at the rate the messengers travel. These also continue at their own scales, without consultation with this tent. At the picket lines at the edge of this camp, the horses shift their weight in the small rhythms of standing sleep. The weight that was on one leg moves to another. The breathing continues. The eyes are closed. The horses do not require the hand at this desk to do any of this. The hand at the desk does not reach any of these. The hand at the desk reaches the page. Breath enters. Breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The page holds the line. The candle holds the flame. The cloth holds the boundary. The wind outside holds itself. Each is at its own distance. The hand is still at the desk. The pen is still in the hand. The candle is still on the table. The page still receives the next line when the next line is placed. The cloth of the tent still slows the cold of the night. The wind across the ridges still moves through the slow rhythms the elevation produces. The horses still shift their weight in their sleep. None of these are waiting for the next line. The next line will be placed when the hand places it. The wind will continue at the rate the wind continues. The horses will breathe at the rate the horses breathe. The drying of the harvest in the distant granaries will continue at the rate the granary air permit. None of these will adjust to whatever line is placed next on the page in this tent. The line will be placed. The world will continue. These are two motions at different scales, in different locations, doing what they are doing. The archive remains. Some things return to the place where contact begins again. The slope does not hold an end. It holds only the angle that brings the stone back. The archive holds the return, not the destination, what the slope allowed the stone to repeat. The slope rises from the lower ground, not steeply at first. The lower portion of the slope is gentle, the ground there shifting from horizontal to inclined across a long, shallow curve. The loose stones and dry grass holding the angle the lower hillside has held since the rains of last season set the surface in its current form. Higher up, the angle steepens. The lower curve gives way to a steeper face, the slope rising more directly toward the ridge above. The ground harder there, the loose material reduced to what the wind and the gravity have left behind. The night is at its middle hour. The moon is partial, low above the ridge to the east. The light it sends across the slope falling at a shallow angle so that the surface holds a long set of small shadows, each pebble casting a thin line, each unevenness in the ground showing its outline darker than the regions around it. The air is dry. The wind is weak, moving along the slope without sound, carrying with it nothing that could be heard above the small adjustments the slope itself produces in the cooling of its own surface. The stone is on the slope. It is a large stone, large enough that two hands are required to brace against it, large enough that its weight is felt in the body's posture from the moment of contact. The shape is irregular. The lower face, the face that rests against the ground at this moment, has been worn smoother than the rest by the contact it has had with the slope across the previous returns. The upper face holds more of the original surface. The rough texture of the rock unaltered except where the hand's contact has, over time, polished small regions to a different finish. The stone is at a particular point on the slope, not at the bottom, not at the top, at a point partway up the rise, the point the previous attempt brought it to before the contact ended, before the support the hands provided released, before the stone began the return the slope's angle required. The position is not held by anything intrinsic to the stone. The stone is at this position because the slope and the friction of the ground beneath it, and the brief obstruction of a smaller stone embedded in the surface, have together brought it to rest here. If any of these conditions changed, the stone would not remain. The stone is in equilibrium with the slope's current condition at this point. The equilibrium is local. It is not a destination. It is where the conditions allowed the motion to stop. A body stands beside the stone. The body has been on the slope long enough that the breathing has settled into a rhythm the climb requires. Deeper than the breathing of rest, slower than the breathing of exertion, the rate the slope and the stone together have set. The hands are at the stone, not pressing yet, resting against the rough surface at the points where the contact will be made. The feet are below the stone, planted at the angle the slope provides, the soles of the shoes finding what grip the ground allows. The body is between the stone and the slope below. If the stone moves down, the body must move first or be in the path. If the body moves up, the stone must follow, or the contact will end. The two are at a particular geometry to each other. The stone above the body's center of mass, the body below the stone's center of mass. The line between the two centers running parallel to the slope's fall line. The hands begin to press. The pressure is applied at the points where the hands contact the stone, distributed across the small areas of skin and palm that meet the surface of the rock. The stone receives the pressure. What the stone does with the pressure depends on the friction between the stone and the ground, on the angle of the slope, on the resistance the embedded smaller stone offers, on the weight of the stone itself. For a moment, nothing visible happens. The pressure builds. The body's weight shifts. The feet press into the slope. The shoes find what grip the ground allows. The hands transmit through the arms into the body's core what the body's posture requires to remain stable while pressure is applied to the stone above. Then the stone moves. Not far, a fraction of its own length. The position the equilibrium had held is no longer the equilibrium. The pressure has shifted the balance enough that the stone's contact with the ground reduces, the friction reduces, the support the embedded stone offered is reduced by the upward motion. The stone moves upward along the slope by the amount the pressure has provided. The body follows. The feet find new positions on the slope. The hands maintain contact with the stone. The pressure continues, adjusted to the new geometry. The angle slightly different now, the friction slightly different, the resistance the slope offers at this position, not identical to the resistance at the previous position. The motion is upward. The motion is also against the slope. These are the same motion. The slope holds its angle. The stone moves along it. The body moves with the stone. The angle does not change. What changes is the position of the stone and the body on the unchanged angle. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The stone did not refuse the summit. It only received the slope again. The motion continues upward for some distance. The body adjusts. The hands maintain pressure. The feet find new contacts. The stone advances along the slope at the rate the body's effort and the slope's resistance together permit. The progress is slow. It is also continuous. While the pressure is continuous, the slope is the same slope. Higher up, the angle steepens. The ground becomes harder. The loose material reduces to nothing. The rocks at this elevation are embedded in the older surface, less able to slide, more able to resist. The friction between the stone and the ground changes character at this point. Less rolling, more dragging. The stone's lower face passing over the harder surface and being polished further by the contact. The body's effort increases. The slope did not require this. The slope is the slope. What changed is what the body's effort must supply to keep the stone moving at the steeper angle. The slope holds its conditions. The body adjusts. At some point on the slope, the effort exceeds what the body can maintain. The stone stops. The motion has not failed. It has reached the point where the body's effort can no longer overcome the angle, the friction, and the weight. The body holds the pressure as long as the body can. The hands maintain their position. The feet maintain their grip. The pressure maintains what it can maintain. But the body's capacity to sustain this effort is finite. The muscles operate by chemistry, and the chemistry has a rate of supply and a rate of accumulation of what the supply produces. And at some point, the accumulation reaches the level the muscle cannot work against. The hands release. The release belongs to the body. It is the moment at which the chemistry can no longer support the pressure. The body's effort falls. The hand's contact with the stone reduces. The pressure the stone was receiving is no longer being supplied at the rate the slope required for the upward motion. The stone is no longer held against the slope. The slope is unchanged. What the slope was when the upward motion began is what the slope is now. What the slope was when the upward motion was being sustained is what the slope is at the moment of release. The angle has not increased. The friction has not increased. The slope is the slope, holding the same angle it has held throughout the climb. The stone begins to return, not at once. For a brief interval, the stone holds at the point of release. The friction between its lower face and the harder surface, providing just enough resistance to delay the motion. The stone is in a new equilibrium for a fraction of a second. Then the equilibrium fails. The slope's component of gravity along the direction of the fall line exceeds the friction the ground can provide. The stone moves downward. The body steps aside. The body had positioned itself for this. The release was not unforeseen. The body's geometry throughout the upward motion was such that a release would mean the stone's downward path would not include the body's position. The body steps to the side of the fall line. The stone moves past where the body had been. The stone moves downward at the rate the slope allows. It accelerates. The component of gravity along the slope provides a continuous force, and the friction provides a partial resistance, and the net force produces acceleration. The stone moves faster as it descends. It bounces over small unevennesses. It rolls in the regions where the angle and the surface permit rolling. It slides in the regions where the surface is smoother. Each section of the slope receives the stone according to its own conditions. the loose material returning some to the slope, the harder regions sending it onward, the embedded smaller stones turning its path slightly to one side or the other. The stone returns to a lower position. Not always the same lower position. The exact point at which the stone comes to rest depends on the small differences in the slope and in the stone's path, and in the resistance the lower regions offer at this particular moment. The position is not predetermined. It is what the slope's current condition and the stone's current trajectory together produce. The stone has returned, not to the lowest point of the slope, to a point along the slope where the equilibrium the conditions allow has caught the motion. The point is somewhere below the point of release. It may be near the original starting position. It may be lower. It may be slightly higher than the original starting position if the path of the descent caught against an obstacle that arrested the motion higher than the original rest. The point at which the stone has come to rest is the point at which the contact begins again. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. For a brief interval, the slope is at rest. The stone is at its new position, at the equilibrium the descent has produced. The body is at the higher point on the slope where the release occurred, the hands no longer in contact with the stone, the arms at the body's sides, the breathing slowing as the chemistry recovers from the recent effort. The slope holds its angle. The wind, weak as it is, continues across the surface. The moon has moved a small amount along the eastern sky. Between the stone and the body, the slope is the slope. The angle is the angle. The ground holds its surface. The pebbles cast their thin shadows in the partial light. Nothing about the slope distinguishes it from the slope of a moment ago, except that the stone is now at a lower point on it than it was at the moment of release. The slope holds the new arrangement without registering the change. The slope is, at every moment, what the slope is. The body and the stone are at different positions on the slope. This is not a problem to be solved. It is the current geometry. The geometry will not adjust itself. The stone will not move upward without contact. The body will not be at the stone without walking. These are not failures of the slope or the stone or the body. They are the conditions the slope and the stone and the body together produce at this moment. The body walks down the slope. The descent is faster than the climb. The body is not carrying the stone. The slope's angle assists the descent. The muscles releasing in coordinated work the way they tightened in coordinated work during the climb. The breathing changes, shallower, the demand on the chemistry reduced. The hands are at the body's sides, not pressed against any surface. The feet find what grip the ground allows, but with less load to manage than the climb required. The body reaches the stone. The stone is at its new position. The body assesses the position the way the body has assessed the position before. The hands find the surface of the stone at the points where the contact will be made. The feet find positions on the slope below the stone. The body and the stone are at the same geometry to each other as they were at the previous beginning. The stone above, the body below, the line between their centers running parallel to the fall line. The conditions are not identical. The stone is at a slightly different point on the slope. The slope at this point has slightly different conditions than the slope at the previous starting point. The body is at slightly different fatigue than before. The muscles have done what they have done, and the chemistry has accumulated what it has accumulated, and the recovery during the descent has restored a portion, but not all of what was spent. The conditions are similar to before. They are not the same. The hands begin to press. The pressure builds. The stone receives. The slope holds its angle. The motion begins upward. The slope holds angle. The stone holds mass. The hand holds pressure. The ground holds the foot. None of them hold a destination. The task had not ended. The stone had only returned to the place where contact begins again. The contact is a relation between four things. The slope provides the angle. The stone provides the mass. The hand provides the pressure. The ground provides the resistance the foot needs to stand. Each of these is doing what its own properties allow it to do. None of them is doing the task. The task is what their relation produces when they are arranged in this geometry, with this pressure applied. Change the angle and the pressure changes. Change the mass and the pressure changes. Change the ground and the foot changes. These are conditions. The task is what occurs when the conditions meet. The task is not in the stone. The stone is in the slope. The stone has mass. The mass has weight in the field of gravity. The weight has a component along the slope's full line. The component is what the slope requires the upward motion to work against. When the work exceeds the component, the motion is upward. When the work falls below the component, the motion is downward. The stone does what these conditions produce. The task is not in the hand. The hand has the chemistry of muscle. The chemistry has a rate of supply. The supply produces pressure for some duration. When the duration ends, the pressure ends. The hand does what these conditions produce. The task is not in the slope. The slope is at the angle the geology and the weather have set. The angle is what it is. The slope does not require the stone to move along it. The slope is the angle. The stone moves along it according to what the stone and the hand and the ground together provide. The task is the relation. When the relation is this relation, the task is what occurs. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The hands press against the stone. The body's weight is forward, against the slope. The feet have found their positions. The pressure is being supplied at the rate the chemistry currently allows. The stone is receiving the pressure. The slope is holding its angle. The ground is holding the foot. The stone moves upward by a small amount, then by another small amount, then by another. The motion is what these conditions at this moment allow. The motion does not require the body to know how far it will reach. The motion does not require the slope to know where the upward path leads. The motion does not require the stone to know it has been here before. The motion is what occurs while the pressure is being applied at the rate the chemistry permits against the slope at the angle the geology has set on the ground that holds the foot. The motion continues. The slope still holds its angle. The stone still holds its mass. The hand still finds the place where pressure begins. The ground still holds the foot. The stone has returned. The contact begins again. The archive remains. Some things remain beyond what surfaces register. The line does not hold what lies beyond it. It holds only the boundary where reception ends. The archive holds the limit, not what was said. What language could not carry across the line? The room is at its quietest hour. The lamps have been turned down. The window is closed against the night. The air in the room has reached the temperature the building's slow conduction allows at this hour. Neither the warmth of the active rooms below, nor the cold of the outside, but the temperature that the walls, having held the day's heat and given it back across the evening, have arrived at now. The walls have done what walls do across an evening of cooling. The air in the room is at the temperature this has produced. A desk stands against one wall. The desk holds a small lamp, a notebook, a pen, and a glass of water. The lamp is the only light. Its small radius reaches the notebook, reaches the pen, reaches the glass, reaches the surface of the desk for a short distance in each direction, and then falls off into the dimmer regions of the room. The corners of the room are in shadow. The bookshelves along the opposite wall are visible only as dark verticals. The ceiling above the lamp is lit weakly by what reflects from the desk surface and what scatters back from the walls nearest the light. A body sits at the desk. The body has been at the desk for some time, long enough that the room has taken the body's heat as a small region of warmer air around the chair, long enough that the desk surface beneath the forearm has reached the body's temperature at the points of contact, long enough that the breathing has settled into the rhythm that quiet attention produces in a body that is not moving. The notebook is open. The pen is in the hand. The hand has placed lines on the notebook across the recent minutes. Sentences, partial sentences, marks where a sentence began and was crossed out, marks where a phrase was tried and abandoned. The page is partly filled. The pen rests against the page now, the tip touching the paper but not moving. The hand is at the place where the line would continue. The hand is not continuing. The room is not silent. It is at the level the room reaches when nothing in the room is producing sound deliberately. The building carries its low-frequency hum, the heating system in its slow cycle, the small movements of air through the ventilation, the structural noises that occur whenever a large building holds itself against gravity and temperature. The window holds the muffled sound of the street far below, the occasional vehicle, the very small density of voices that survive the distance and the glass. The room itself has its own faint sounds, the lamp's filament holding its current, the small contractions of wood in the desk as the room cools. These are above the threshold. They reach the body's ear at amplitudes the ear attends to. They are part of what the room contains. Below the threshold, the room contains other things. The body's circulation moves a small pressure into the air around it. The amplitude is far below what the ear can detect at any distance. The body's small movements set vibrations into the chair. The chair sets them into the floor. The amplitudes are far below what arrives at the ear as sound. The wood of the desk is settling toward the room's temperature. The settling produces pressure changes too gradual to register as sound. The air molecules are in their constant small motion. The motion produces fluctuations at every point in the room. The fluctuations are sound by one definition. They are below what any surface in the room could pick out from the resting state of the air. These are present. They are below what registers. The room contains the sounds above the threshold and the not sounds below it. Both are present in the air. The distinction is not between presence and absence. The distinction is between what receivers in the room can receive and what they cannot. Breath enters. Breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. What could not be said was not absent. It remained beyond the line where language could receive it. The hand is at the place where the line would continue. The line above it ends mid-sentence. The sentence was tried, the words placed, and then the sentence stopped. Not because the hand was tired, not because the pen was empty. The sentence stopped because what came next did not have a form the sentence could hold. The pen carries ink that can place any shape on the page that the pen's tip can describe. The page receives any shape the pen places. The hand can move the pen in any direction the hand's mechanics allow. None of these were the limit. The limit was earlier. It was at the place where the next word was being chosen. The word that was needed was not in the set of words that the language makes available for what the word would have done. The need was specific. The available words were close, but each one carried something that was not what the need required, or failed to carry something the need required. The hand held the pen above the page. The pen held its ink. The page held the lines above. The mechanism of writing was intact. What was missing was the word that would have made the next line continue what the previous line had begun. The hand did not fail to write. The language did not extend to where the line was going. This is not a failure of the hand. The hand is doing what the hand can do, holding the pen at the position where, if the word came, the word would be placed. The hand is in the geometry that completion would require. The hand is not the limit. This is not a failure of the page. The page is at the position the desk allows. The page is dry where the most recent line dried, ready where the next line would be placed. The paper is the paper. The paper is not the limit. This is not a failure of the pen. The pen has ink. The tip can place ink at any point on the page. The pen is the mechanism. The pen is not the limit. The limit is at the line between what the language carries and what the language does not. The line is not in the hand or the page or the pen. The line is in the language. The walls of the room have something in common with this line. A wall is a surface that receives. It receives the air's pressure at its face. It receives the light from the lamp on the side that faces the lamp. It receives the warmth that the room's air gives to it across the long evening. What the wall takes in, the wall takes in. It warms by the amount the heat allows it to warm. It returns the light at the proportion its color and texture allow. There is no wall in the room that has failed to receive what it is in contact with, but every wall is the boundary of what is on the other side. The wall does not extend into what lies beyond. The wall is at its position, and on the far side of the wall is the corridor or the adjacent room or the outside air. The wall is the limit of the room. What is on the other side is not in the room. The wall does not hold what is on the other side. The wall holds the boundary. The line in the language is like the wall. It holds what is on this side of it. What is on the other side is not on the page. The line is not where the writing failed. The line is where what could be written ends. The page receives what the line carries. The page does not receive what the line does not carry. The boundary is in the line. The body listens, not to anything in particular, to the room. The ear receives what the room contains at the levels the ear can catch. Above the threshold, the building's low hum, the muffled traffic at the window, the small sounds the room itself produces. Below the threshold, everything the air is doing that does not arrive at the ear with the amplitude an audible sound requires. The body cannot hear what is below the threshold. What is there reaches the body by other means. The body's skin registers the air's temperature. The body's interior registers the body's own pressures. The body's joints register the chair and the floor. These are not silence. They are sensations below the threshold of what is conventionally heard, but above the threshold of what other surfaces of the body can receive. The room is full of what is below one threshold and above another. The lamp gives off light below the threshold of warmth at the far wall. The body gives off heat below the threshold at which the ear could receive it as sound. The desk gives off creaks below the threshold at which the eye could register them as motion. Every surface in the room is producing something at every moment. What any given receiver in the room catches is a fraction of what is being produced, the fraction whose amplitude or frequency or kind matches what that receiver can respond to. The rest is present. The rest is what each receiver does not receive. Every receiver in the room has its own line. The ear has a line below which sound becomes inaudible. The eye has a line below which light becomes invisible. The skin has a line below which pressure becomes unfelt. Each line is at a different level, set by what each surface is built to hold of what arrives at it. The room contains pressures and lights and temperatures at all levels, far above each line and far below. The receivers register what falls between their own thresholds. The rest is in the room without being received. The room and the receivers are not the same. The room is what is present at every level. The receivers are what catches a portion of what is present at the levels they can catch. What is not caught is not what is not there. It is what falls outside the line each receiver holds. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The pen has not moved. The hand has not moved. The sentence that ended is the sentence that ended. The next sentence has not begun. What would have made the next sentence? The word that the need required has not arrived. The hand will hold the pen for some time at the place where the line would continue. The line will not continue at this moment. The line may continue later if the language provides what the need requires, or if the need adjusts to what the language can provide. For now, the line ends. What the line does not hold is not lost. The need that did not find a word is still in the body. It is held the way the body holds the temperature of the desk or the position of the chair, by the contact the body has with itself, by the pressure of the unfinished thought against the inside of the body's attention. The thought has not been placed on the page. The thought has not been carried into sound. The thought is in the body, at the point where it would have crossed into language if a word had been available. The thought is not absent. The thought is at a place language could not reach. This is what the room contains tonight. The sentences written, dried on the page. The sentence ended without continuation. The thought that did not find a word. The pressure variations above the threshold the ear attends to. The pressure variations below that threshold, present in the air at amplitudes the ear cannot distinguish. The heat the lamp gives off. The heat the body gives off. The cold the window holds against the outside. The wood of the desk settling toward the room. The walls holding the day's heat at a level that the slow exchange across the evening has brought them to. Everything that is present at one level or another. Everything that is not received is not absent. It is at a level the receiver does not respond to. The line holds the said. The boundary holds the unsaid. Each is what the other is not. The room holds air. The air holds pressure. Pressure below the threshold is still pressure. The hand sets the pen down. The pen rests on the desk beside the notebook. The notebook holds the lines that were placed and the empty space below the last line. The empty space is not empty in any absolute sense. It is paper, the same paper the previous lines were placed on, ready to receive what the pen would place if the pen returned. The space is empty of what could have been placed and was not. What could not be placed was not nothing. It was what would have continued if the language had carried what the need required across the line where reception ends. The line where reception ends is not the line at the bottom of the page. The line where reception ends is in the language itself, at the boundary between what words can carry and what words cannot. The page received what the words could carry. The page did not receive what the words could not carry. The boundary is not visible on the page. The boundary is visible only by what is on the page and what is not. The lines that were placed earlier in the notebook were also at the boundary. Each completed sentence was a portion of what the language could carry across the line. Each sentence reached the page where the words for what it carried were available to the hand. The sentences that did not appear were not failures of the hand. They were the regions where the language did not extend. The notebook holds the record of what crossed into the page. It does not hold the record of what did not. The completed sentences and the incomplete sentence are at the same boundary. The completed ones are on this side of it. The incomplete one is at it. What would have been the next sentence, if the next word had come, is on the other side. The other side is not on the page. The other side is not absent. It is where the line ends and what the line cannot carry continues. The body has been at this work for some time. The notebook holds many pages of work like this. Lines placed, lines crossed out, sentences begun and abandoned, sentences completed where the language allowed. The accumulated pages are the record of where the language reached and where it did not. Each page shows the line as the page received it. None of the pages shows the line as the line is. The boundary itself, in the language, is not on any page. The pages show only this side of the boundary. They also show the spaces where the other side did not arrive. The room continues. The lamp continues at its small radius. The notebook holds the lines. The pen rests beside the notebook. The body holds the warmth the desk has reached at the points of contact. The room contains what the room contains, what the receivers in the room register, and what they do not. What the room contains is not the same as what registers. What was not said is not the same as what was not there. What language could not carry remains where language did not reach. The archive remains